The gunshot that ended Olivia Emerson's life as she knew it came not from a barrel, but from her own mouth on a scorching afternoon in Williams, Arizona, when she told her father that his foreman was stealing cattle and selling them across the Mexican border. The year was 1884, and the Emerson Ranch sprawled across 15,000 acres of high desert grassland, where ponderosa pines gave way to scrubby juniper, and the summer heat baked the red earth until it cracked. Olivia had grown up on this land, had learned to ride before she could properly read, had spent 22 years believing that honesty and integrity mattered more than profit or pride. She had been wrong about what mattered to her father. "You will take back those words," Richard Emerson had said, his face turning the color of sun-dried clay. They stood in his office, the room that smelled of leather and tobacco and old money. Account books lay open on his desk, but Olivia knew he would not look at them, would not see what she had seen when she had checked the numbers against the actual herd counts. "I cannot take back the truth," Olivia had replied, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Father, Marcus Brennan has been stealing from you for at least 2 years. The numbers do not match. I have ridden out and counted the herds myself. We are short nearly 300 head, and I have seen Brennan meeting with the Mexican cattle buyers near Ash Fork." Her father had slammed his palm against the desk so hard that an inkwell jumped. "Marcus Brennan has worked for this family for 15 years. He served with me in the war. He saved my life at Antietam. And you dare to accuse him based on your female arithmetic and your wild imagination. I dare to tell you what I have witnessed with my own eyes. Then your eyes are as faithless as your mother's were." The words had struck like a physical blow. Olivia's mother had died 8 years earlier, had wasted away from consumption while her husband built his empire. To have her memory invoked in such a manner made Olivia's chest tighten with rage and grief. "Do not speak of mother that way. She would have wanted you to hear the truth, no matter how uncomfortable." "Get out," Richard Emerson had said, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "Get out of my office. Get out of my house. Get off my land. You are no daughter of mine." Olivia had stared at him, waiting for him to take it back, to let reason overcome his anger. But he had turned his back to her, facing the window that overlooked his domain, and his shoulders had been rigid with finality. She had packed what she could carry in 2 saddlebags, had taken her mare Juniper and the money she had saved from selling her mother's jewelry over the years, and she had ridden away from the only home she had ever known. Her younger brother Thomas had watched from the barn, his face twisted with confusion and fear, but he had not spoken. At 16, he was still under their father's thumb, still desperate for approval that came as rarely as rain in August. Williams was not a large town, but it was growing. The Atlantic and Pacific Railroad had come through 2 years earlier, bringing with it opportunity and chaos in equal measure. Saloons outnumbered churches 3-1, and the streets filled with miners, loggers, railroad workers, and cowboys looking for work or trouble or both. Olivia had ridden into town as the sun began its descent toward the San Francisco peaks in the distance, painting the sky in shades of amber and rust. She had $63 to her name, a horse, a bedroll, 2 changes of clothes, her mother's Bible, and a silver locket that held a curl of her mother's hair. It was not enough to start a new life, but it would have to be enough to start something. The boarding house on Railroad Avenue had a sign in the window advertising rooms for rent. The proprietress, a severe woman named Mrs. Catherine Walsh, had looked Olivia up and down with an expression that suggested she found her lacking. "I do not rent to women of questionable character, Mrs. Walsh had said. "Then it is fortunate that my character is not in question," Olivia had replied, meeting the woman's gaze without flinching. "I am seeking honest lodging while I look for honest work. I can pay 2 weeks in advance." The mention of payment had softened Mrs. Walsh's expression somewhat. "No men in the rooms, no drinking, no loud noise after 8 o'clock. Breakfast is at 6, and if you miss it, you go hungry until supper. Those terms are acceptable." The room was small and spare, with a narrow bed, a washstand, a single chair, and a window that overlooked an alley. But it was clean, and it was hers, and Olivia had lain down on that unfamiliar bed and wept until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen. Morning came too early, announced by the whistle of a train and the sounds of a town waking to commerce. Olivia washed her face in cold water from the pitcher, braided her dark hair, and dressed in her most practical clothes. If she was to survive, she needed work, and she needed it quickly. The problem was that Williams, like most Western towns, had clear ideas about what work was appropriate for a woman. The saloons would hire her, but Olivia had no intention of serving drinks to drunk men who would see her as available for more than just pouring whiskey. The general store had no positions available. The hotel had a waitress already. The seamstress shop was run by a woman who did all her own work and made it clear she had no need for assistance. By midday, Olivia's optimism had begun to crumble. She stood on the wooden sidewalk, watching the traffic of horses and wagons, wondering if she would have to swallow her pride and return to her father's ranch to beg forgiveness for the crime of telling the truth. "You look like someone shot your dog and stole your horse," a voice said beside her. Olivia turned to find a man watching her with an expression of genuine concern, rather than the leering interest she had grown accustomed to that morning. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin, and eyes the color of creek water in shadow. He wore dusty range clothes and a hat that had seen better years, and there was something about the set of his shoulders that suggested capability and confidence without arrogance. "No dog, and my horse is safely stabled," Olivia said, "but I thank you for your concern." "Jacob Vaughn," the man said, touching the brim of his hat. "Most folks call me Jake." "Olivia Emerson." She hesitated, then added, "Most folks used to call me Liv." "Used to. It seems I am in need of reinventing myself. My old life has proven to be unavailable." Jake studied her face for a moment, and Olivia had the unsettling sensation that he could see more than she intended to reveal. "You are looking for work." It was not a question. "I am, though the options for a woman in this town appear to be limited." "Can you cook?" "Well enough to keep body and soul together." "Can you handle livestock?" Olivia almost laughed. "I grew up on a ranch. I can ride, rope, brand, birth a calf, and treat everything from hoof rot to colic." Jake's eyebrows rose slightly. "Then you are overqualified for most of the work available here." He was quiet for a moment, appearing to consider something. "I run a small outfit about 8 miles north of town. Nothing fancy. About 200 head of cattle, some horses. I have been working it alone since my partner moved to California last spring, and I am behind on just about everything. The pay would not be much, but there is a line shack on the property that is weatherproof and has a stove. You would have privacy, and I give you my word that I am no threat to your virtue or your safety." Olivia wanted to accept immediately, wanted to seize this unexpected lifeline with both hands, but caution made her pause. "Why would you offer this to a stranger?" "Because I am a decent judge of character, and I can see that you are in genuine need. Because I need help, and you clearly have skills that would be useful. And because—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Because I know what it is like to be cast out for telling an inconvenient truth. Sometimes the only thing that saves you is someone willing to offer a hand instead of judgment." There was a story there, Olivia knew, but she did not press. Instead, she said, "When would I start?" "Tomorrow morning, if you are willing. I have supplies to pick up today and business to attend to." "Can you meet me at the livery at dawn?" "I will be there." Jake nodded, touched his hat again, and walked away, leaving Olivia standing on the sidewalk with something she had not had since her father's pronouncement: hope. That evening, Olivia wrote a letter to her brother Thomas, explaining where she would be, asking him to write to her in care of General Delivery in Williams. She did not know if he would respond, did not know if their father would intercept the letter or forbid Thomas from corresponding with his disgraced sister. But she had to try to maintain that connection, fragile as it might be. She slept better that night, though dreams of her father's anger and Marcus Brennan's treachery still troubled her rest. When she woke before dawn and prepared to leave, Mrs. Walsh was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. "I will be leaving today," Olivia told her. "I have found employment." Mrs. Walsh looked at her with something that might have been approval. "Respectable employment, I hope. Working cattle on a ranch north of town." "For Jake Vaughn." At Olivia's nod, Mrs. Walsh's expression softened further. "That is good. He is a decent man, that one. Lost his wife and baby son to fever 5 years back, and it nearly broke him. But he is honest and honorable. You could do worse." The information settled into Olivia's chest with a weight of sadness. Jake had known loss, had known grief. Perhaps that was why he had recognized her desperation and offered help without condition. The sky was just beginning to lighten when Olivia reached the livery, her saddlebags packed and Juniper saddled and ready. Jake was already there, loading supplies onto a pack mule. "Punctual," he said with approval. "That is a good start." They rode out as the sun broke over the eastern horizon, turning the sky shades of pink and gold. The land north of Williams rose gradually toward the mountains, ponderosa pines growing thicker as the elevation increased. The morning air was cool and sweet with the scent of pine sap and wild grass. Jake's ranch was modest by the standards Olivia had grown up with, but it was well maintained and thoughtfully laid out. The main house was a sturdy log structure with a covered porch. The barn was solid, the corrals well built, and set about 50 yards from the main house was a small cabin that Jake gestured toward. "That is the line shack I mentioned. It needs some cleaning, but the roof is sound and the stove works. There is a spring-fed creek about 20 yards behind it for water." Olivia dismounted and approached the cabin, pushing open the door to reveal a single room with a bed frame, a table, 2 chairs, and a pot-bellied stove. Dust covered everything, and mouse droppings suggested the place had been unoccupied for some time. But the walls were solid, the window had glass, and she could see the potential for making it comfortable. "It will do nicely," she said. "Good. Get settled in today and we will start work tomorrow. I will have supper ready at the main house at 6 if you want to join me, and we can discuss what needs doing." Olivia spent the day transforming the cabin from abandoned to inhabitable. She swept and scrubbed, aired out the musty bedding, and checked for gaps that might let in rodents or cold air. Jake brought over a spare mattress, some blankets, and a crate of basic supplies: flour, salt, coffee, beans, and dried meat. By evening, the little cabin felt like something that could become a home. When she walked to the main house for supper, she found Jake at the stove, cooking steaks in a cast iron skillet. The house was neat but impersonal, with few decorations or touches that suggested anyone truly lived there. "I appreciate you taking me in," Olivia said as they sat down to eat. "I know you do not know anything about me or my circumstances." Jake cut into his steak, chewing thoughtfully before responding. "I figure you will tell me what you want me to know when you are ready. All I need to know for now is whether you are running from the law." "I am not." Then we are fine. They ate in comfortable silence for a time, and then Olivia found herself talking, the words spilling out as if a dam had broken. She told him about discovering Brennan's theft, about her father's refusal to listen, about the disownment and her arrival in Williams with nowhere to go. Jake listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. "Your father is Richard Emerson," he said when she finished. "It was not a question. You know of him. Everyone in this part of Arizona knows of him. He runs the biggest ranch in Coconino County, and Marcus Brennan has a reputation as a hard man. He is a thief. I do not doubt it. But proving it to a man who does not want to see the truth is near impossible." Jake leaned back in his chair, studying her. "What will you do? Do you plan to go back? Not unless my father acknowledges what I told him and makes things right. I cannot live in a house where truth is less valued than pride. Then you have more integrity than most. Truth is an expensive commodity out here." Over the following days, Olivia fell into the rhythm of ranch work. She rose before dawn, helped Jake move cattle to new grazing areas, mended fence, treated a mare with colic, and spent long hours in the saddle under the Arizona sun. Her body remembered the work even if her muscles protested the return to such labor. Jake was a good teacher when she encountered something unfamiliar, patient and thorough in his explanations. What surprised her most was how easy it was to be around him. Jake did not talk excessively, but when he spoke, his words had weight and meaning. He did not treat her as fragile or incapable, but neither did he expect her to handle tasks beyond her strength. There was a natural balance to their working relationship that made the days pass quickly. In the evenings, they often shared supper, trading stories about their lives. Jake had grown up in Texas, had come west after the war, and had married a woman named Sarah whom he had met at a church social in Prescott. His voice grew soft when he spoke of her, and sadder still when he mentioned their son, Michael, who had lived only 3 months before the fever took him, and then took Sarah 2 days later. "I thought about selling out, moving back to Texas," Jake admitted one evening as they sat on his porch watching the sunset. "Could not see the point of building something with no one to build it for. But then I realized that giving up would dishonor what Sarah and I had planned together. So I stayed. Some days are easier than others." "I am sorry for your loss," Olivia said quietly. "Mrs. Walsh told me a little about it. I cannot imagine such pain." "You carry your own grief," Jake observed. "Losing a parent's love while they still live might be worse than death." "At least death is not a choice." The insight struck deep, and Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "I keep thinking he will change his mind, that he will look at the books or investigate Brennan and realize I was telling the truth. But then I wonder if the truth even matters to him, or if his pride is too great to admit he was wrong. Some men would rather lose everything than admit they made a mistake. Your father might be one of those men. That terrifies me. It should. But you did the right thing by speaking up, even knowing the cost. That takes courage." Weeks passed, sliding from late summer into early autumn. The aspens in the high country began to turn gold, and the evenings grew cool enough to require a fire. Olivia's hands toughened, her skin darkened further from the sun, and the ache in her heart began to dull from sharp agony to a manageable sadness. She and Jake worked well together, anticipating each other's needs, developing an easy shorthand of communication. Olivia found herself watching him when he was not looking, noticing the way his hands moved with sure competence, the way he sat a horse with natural grace, the way his rare smiles transformed his serious face into something approachable and warm. She tried not to think about what these observations meant, tried not to acknowledge the flutter in her chest when he praised her work, or the way her pulse quickened when their hands accidentally touched while working. He was her employer, her benefactor, and she would not complicate the arrangement with feelings that might not be returned. But then came the day in mid-October when everything shifted. They were driving a dozen head of cattle to a stock pen near the north boundary when Olivia's horse stepped in a gopher hole and went down hard. Olivia managed to kick free of the stirrups, but she hit the ground with enough force to knock the wind from her lungs and send a sharp pain shooting through her left wrist. Jake was beside her in an instant, helping her sit up. "Can you breathe? Are you hurt?" Olivia gasped, trying to pull air into her stunned lungs. When she finally managed a breath, she said, "My wrist. I landed on it." Jake examined the injury with gentle hands, his touch careful and professional. "Not broken, I think, but badly sprained. We need to get ice on it and wrap it properly." He helped her to her feet, then whistled for her horse, which had scrambled up and was standing nearby looking apologetic. The mare was sound, just shaken. Jake helped Olivia into the saddle, then mounted his own horse and took the lead rope of Olivia's mare. "I can manage," Olivia protested. "I know you can, but you do not have to." Back at the ranch, Jake settled Olivia in a chair on the porch and brought cold water from the spring, soaking clean cloths and wrapping them around her swelling wrist. He worked with quiet concentration, and Olivia watched his face, seeing the concern there, the carefulness of his ministrations. "Thank you," she said softly. Jake looked up, meeting her eyes. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition that seemed to surprise them both. His hand stilled on her wrist, his thumb resting against her pulse point where her heartbeat had begun to race. "Liv," he said, and the way he spoke her name made it sound like something precious. "Jake," she replied, and she knew her feelings were written plainly on her face. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away, to object. But Olivia did not want to retreat. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted the comfort and connection and possibility of something good rising from the ashes of her old life. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and questioning, a kiss that asked permission even as it offered promise. Olivia answered by reaching up with her good hand to touch his face, feeling the roughness of stubble against her palm, the warmth of his skin. When they finally pulled apart, Jake rested his forehead against hers. "I did not plan for this. Neither did I. I do not want you to feel obligated. You work for me, you live on my property, and I would never use that position to pressure you." Olivia smiled, her heart feeling lighter than it had in months. "You are not pressuring me. I have been hoping you might feel the same way I do." "How long?" "Weeks, I think. Maybe from the beginning, but I would not let myself acknowledge it." Jake pulled back slightly, studying her face. "I am 15 years older than you. I am a widower with ghosts. I do not have much to offer beyond this ranch and my word. Your word seems worth a great deal to me, and I am not afraid of ghosts. We all carry them." Olivia paused, then added, "I am 22 years old, Jake. I am not a child. I know my own heart, and it has made its choice." "Truth deserves a home," Jake said softly. "That is what you gave me when you told me your story. Truth without judgment or condition. I want to give you the same. The truth is that I have been falling in love with you since the day you showed up in town looking lost and determined in equal measure. The truth is that I wake up looking forward to working beside you, and I go to sleep thinking about your laugh. The truth is that you have brought light back into a life I thought was permanently dark." Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks, but they were not tears of sorrow. "The truth is that I love you too. The truth is that I am grateful for the disaster that brought me here, because it brought me to you. The truth is that I want to build something with you, something honest and real." They sealed this exchange of truths with another kiss, deeper and more certain than the first. and as the autumn sun painted the sky in shades of fire, Olivia felt something inside her shift and settle, as if pieces that had been scattered were finally falling into place. The following weeks were a revelation. Olivia had never experienced courtship, had never known what it was to be cherished and desired and respected all at once. Her father had rejected several suitors over the years, men he deemed insufficiently wealthy or connected. Olivia had felt relief more than disappointment at those rejections, sensing that the men in question were interested in her father's property more than in her. With Jake, everything was different. He courted her with quiet gestures, wildflowers left on her cabin doorstep, his best coffee saved for her cup, his coat offered when the evening turned cold. They worked side by side during the day and sat together in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing, learning the landscape of each other's thoughts and dreams. Jake was a thoughtful man, given to long silences that were not awkward but contemplative. He read books in the evenings, everything from agricultural journals to Shakespeare, and he was delighted to discover that Olivia shared his love of reading. They began trading volumes, discussing stories and ideas with the enthusiasm of students. He was also a man of deep feeling, though he expressed emotion through action more than words. When Olivia's wrist healed, he taught her to shoot with greater accuracy, patiently coaching her stance and breathing. When she mentioned missing her mother's apple pie, he rode into Williams and came back with a bag of apples and her mother's recipe, which he had somehow convinced Mrs. Walsh to help him acquire from the general store owner who knew the Emerson cook. "How did you manage this?" Olivia asked, holding the folded paper with her mother's handwriting. "I told them it was for someone who deserved a piece of home," Jake said simply. Olivia had kissed him then, pouring gratitude and love into the embrace. They had been careful about physical affection, both aware of propriety and the complications that could arise from moving too quickly. But the attraction between them was powerful, a current that ran beneath every interaction. In early November, a letter arrived for Olivia at the general store. The handwriting was her brother's, and her hands shook as she opened it. "Dear Liv," Thomas had written, "I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing in secret because Father has forbidden anyone from speaking your name in the house. He is angrier than I have ever seen him, but I think some of that anger is directed at himself, though he would never admit it. I have been watching Brennan carefully since you left, and I have seen things that trouble me. Unexplained trips, meetings with men I do not recognize, and when I checked the books as you did, the numbers do not add up. You were right, Liv. I do not know how to make Father see it, and I am afraid of what will happen if I try to speak up as you did. But I wanted you to know that I believe you and I miss you terribly. Please write back and tell me you are safe and well. Your loving brother, Thomas." Olivia read the letter 3 times, emotions warring in her chest. Relief that Thomas believed her, anger that her father remained stubborn, fear for her brother's position, and sadness that her family was so fractured. She showed the letter to Jake that evening. "Your brother has courage," Jake said after reading it, "but he is right to be cautious. If Brennan is as dangerous as he seems, speaking up could put Thomas at risk. What should I do?" Write back to Thomas. Tell him to be careful, to gather evidence if he can do so safely, but not to confront Brennan or your father directly. And tell him where you are, so he knows he has a place to go if things become dangerous. Olivia followed Jake's advice, crafting a careful response that expressed her love and concern while urging caution. She included the ranch's location and an open invitation to visit whenever Thomas could manage it. As November progressed, the weather turned colder. Snow dusted the peaks of the San Francisco mountains, and frost silvered the grass in the mornings. Jake and Olivia worked to prepare the ranch for winter, bringing in hay, repairing the barn roof, and moving the cattle to lower pastures where they would be more sheltered from storms. One evening, as they were finishing supper, Jake reached across the table and took Olivia's hand. "I want to ask you something, and I want you to feel free to say no without any concern for your position here." Olivia's heart began to pound. "What is it?" "I love you, Liv. I want to spend my life with you, build a future with you. I know we have not been courting long by conventional standards, but I am old enough to know my own heart, and it is completely yours. Will you marry me?" Joy flooded through Olivia, so intense it was almost painful. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." Jake stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were something infinitely precious. "I do not have much to offer you. This ranch is small, and the work is hard, and there will be lean years mixed with the good ones. But I promise you honesty, loyalty, and all the love I have." "That is everything I want," Olivia said, tilting her face up to kiss him. "I do not need wealth or status. I need truth and partnership and love. You have already given me all of that." They planned a simple wedding for early December, to be held in the small church in Williams with whatever friends and neighbors cared to attend. Olivia wrote to Thomas, inviting him to the ceremony, though she doubted their father would allow him to come. She did not bother writing to Richard Emerson himself. If he wanted to be part of her life, he would have to be the one to reach out. The weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Olivia worked with a seamstress in town to alter one of her mother's old dresses, a simple but elegant gown of ivory silk that had been carefully preserved. Jake purchased new clothes for himself and hired a local carpenter to build additional furniture for the house, explaining to Olivia that he wanted her to feel that the main house was truly hers, not just a place haunted by memories of his first wife. "Sarah would want me to be happy," Jake said when Olivia expressed concern about moving into the house too quickly. "She was the least jealous person I ever knew, and you are not trying to replace her. You are writing your own story, and I am grateful to be part of it." 3 days before the wedding, Thomas arrived at the ranch unannounced, riding a lathered horse and looking over his shoulder as if he expected pursuit. Olivia saw him from the barn and ran to meet him, pulling him into a fierce embrace. "Are you all right? What happened? Did Father send you?" Thomas shook his head, dismounting with the weariness of someone who had ridden hard and fast. "Father does not know I am here. I left in the middle of the night. Liv, things have gotten bad. I found evidence that Brennan has been stealing cattle for at least 3 years, probably longer. I tried to show Father the proof, and he refused to look at it. He said I was being influenced by your hysteria, that I was betraying him just as you had. And then Brennan found out that I was investigating him. Oh, Thomas, he threatened me, Liv. Told me that accidents happen on ranches all the time, and maybe I should be more careful about where I rode alone. I realized I was not safe there anymore, so I left." Jake had approached during this exchange, and he extended his hand to Thomas. "You are welcome here for as long as you need to stay. We will stable your horse and get you fed and rested. Then we can figure out what comes next." Thomas shook Jake's hand gratefully. "Liv wrote that you were a good man. I can see she was right." Over the next few days, Thomas settled into the rhythm of the ranch, making himself useful and slowly relaxing from the taut wariness he had arrived with. He and Jake got along well, bonding over their shared concern for Olivia and their mutual disdain for Marcus Brennan's crimes. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cold, the sky a brilliant blue unmarred by clouds. Olivia dressed carefully in her mother's silk gown, pinning her dark hair up and securing it with a comb that had belonged to her grandmother. She looked at herself in the small mirror in her cabin and saw a woman who had walked through fire and emerged transformed. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. The church was small and spare, decorated with pine boughs and late-season wildflowers that Jake had somehow found. Mrs. Walsh attended, along with several ranchers and townspeople who had come to know and respect both Jake and Olivia. Thomas stood beside his sister, offering his blessing and his presence as the only family representative. When the minister asked who gave this woman in marriage, Thomas said clearly, "She gives herself, with my full support and love." And when Jake took Olivia's hands and spoke his vows, promising to honor her truth and cherish her courage, to stand beside her in hardship and joy, to love her with all he had for all the days of his life, Olivia felt tears of happiness stream down her face. Her own vows were equally heartfelt. "I promise to be your partner in all things, to offer you honesty even when it is difficult, to build a life with you founded on truth and trust. You said that truth deserves a home, and you gave me that home when I had nowhere else to go. Now I offer you the home of my heart, today and always." When they kissed as husband and wife, the small congregation erupted in applause and cheers. And as they walked back down the aisle together, Olivia felt a sense of rightness so profound it was almost overwhelming. This was where she was meant to be, beside this man, building this life. The celebration that followed was held at the ranch, with neighbors bringing food and drink, fiddle music filling the air, and dancing that lasted until well after dark. Thomas seemed lighter than he had in weeks, laughing and talking with Jake's friends, no longer looking over his shoulder for threats. When the last guests had departed and Thomas had retired to the line shack that was now his temporary home, Jake and Olivia finally found themselves alone in the main house that was now truly theirs. Jake had lit a fire in the hearth, and the room glowed with warmth and golden light. "Hello, wife," Jake said, pulling Olivia into his arms. "Hello, husband," she replied, feeling giddy with happiness and nervous anticipation. They had been careful about physical intimacy during their courtship, both respecting the boundaries of propriety. But now those boundaries no longer existed, and Olivia felt her pulse quicken as Jake's hands moved to the pins in her hair, carefully removing them until her dark locks tumbled down around her shoulders. "You are so beautiful," he said quietly, running his fingers through her hair. "I have wanted to see you like this for so long." Olivia reached up to unbutton his shirt, her fingers trembling slightly. "I was nervous about this night, but now that it is here, I am only eager. I trust you completely." Jake's answering kiss was tender and passionate, a promise of what was to come. He lifted her in his arms and carried her to the bedroom, laying her down on the bed with reverent care. What followed was an education in intimacy. Jake patient and attentive, ensuring Olivia's comfort and pleasure even as they navigated the newness of physical union. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Olivia's head resting on Jake's chest as his fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. "I love you," she said softly. "Thank you for being patient with me, for making this beautiful." "I love you too, and there is nothing to thank me for. Loving you, showing you pleasure, building this life together, it is all joy for me." They talked late into the night, making plans for the future, discussing how they might expand the ranch, what they wanted for their eventual children. Olivia felt a sense of peace she had not known was possible, a feeling of being exactly where she belonged. Winter settled over northern Arizona with determination. Snow fell regularly, blanketing the high country and making ranch work more challenging but also starkly beautiful. Thomas proved himself invaluable, working alongside Jake and Olivia with diligence and skill. The three of them developed a strong partnership, dividing responsibilities efficiently and supporting each other through the difficult days. In late January, a letter arrived from an unexpected source. Olivia opened it at the kitchen table, Jake and Thomas both present, and her face paled as she read. "It is from Father," she said quietly. "He wants to meet with me." "Does he apologize?" Thomas asked. "Not in so many words." "He says he has matters of importance to discuss and requests that I come to the ranch." Olivia looked up at Jake. "What should I do?" "What do you want to do?" Jake asked. "Part of me wants to refuse, to let him feel the weight of rejection as I did. But another part of me wonders if this is him trying to make amends without knowing how to say the words. Or it could be a trap," Thomas said darkly. "Father is proud. He might want to punish you further." "I do not think so," Jake said thoughtfully. "A man who wanted to inflict more harm would not ask for a meeting. He would simply act. This sounds like someone who has realized he made a mistake but does not know how to fix it." Olivia thought for a long moment, then made her decision. "I will go, but not alone. Jake, will you come with me?" "Of course. And I think Thomas should come too. United front." The journey to the Emerson ranch took most of a day, the three of them riding through cold but clear weather. As they approached the property that had once been Olivia's home, she felt her stomach tighten with anxiety and old pain. But Jake's presence beside her was steadying, and Thomas's solidarity gave her strength. Richard Emerson was waiting on the porch of the main house, and Olivia was shocked by how much he seemed to have aged in the few months since she had last seen him. His face was lined with weariness, his shoulders not as straight as they once had been. "Olivia," he said as they dismounted. His eyes moved to Jake. "And you must be the man she married." "Jake Vaughn, sir." Jake's tone was polite but not deferential. "I am here because my wife asked me to be." "Your wife?" Richard said the words as if tasting them, finding them strange. His gaze moved to Thomas. "And you, boy, you left without permission." "I left because I was threatened," Thomas said firmly, "and because you refused to see the truth about Brennan." "Come inside," Richard said abruptly. "We have things to discuss." They followed him into the office where Olivia had first been disowned, the room that still smelled of leather and tobacco. But now the account books on the desk were open, pages marked with slips of paper, and Richard's expression was grave. "I owe you an apology," Richard said without preamble, looking directly at Olivia. "You were right about Marcus Brennan. He has been stealing from me for years, and I was too blind and stubborn to see it. He is in custody now, awaiting trial. The evidence Thomas gathered was enough to force me to investigate properly, and once I started looking, the theft was undeniable." Olivia felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. "Why did you refuse to believe me when I told you?" "Pride," Richard said simply. "Brennan saved my life during the war, and I felt I owed him loyalty. I did not want to believe that someone I trusted could betray me so thoroughly. And I did not want to admit that my daughter was more observant and honest than I was." He paused, then added, "I was wrong. I was cruel to you, and I have regretted it every day since you left." "Then why did you wait so long to reach out?" "Because I did not know how. Because I was ashamed. Because I thought you might be better off without a father who could cast you out so easily." Richard's voice cracked slightly. "But Thomas made me understand that my pride was costing me my children, both of you, and I do not want to die a lonely old man who valued his ego more than his family." Olivia felt tears threatening but held them back. "What do you want from me, Father?" "Forgiveness, if you can grant it. A chance to rebuild what I destroyed. I do not expect you to come back here to live. Thomas told me you are married and building your own life. But I hope you might allow me to be part of that life, to know my daughter again." Jake spoke up quietly. "That decision is Liv's to make, but I will tell you that she has grieved losing you. She has carried that pain every day. If you are sincere in wanting to make amends, you need to prove it with more than words. I understand. Richard looked at Jake with something like respect. You are protective of her. That is good. She deserves someone who will stand beside her. He turned back to Olivia. I have restored your inheritance. You and Thomas will split the ranch equally when I am gone. But more than that, I want you to know that I am proud of you. Proud of your courage, your integrity, your willingness to speak truth even when it cost you everything. You are more like your mother than I realized, and that is the highest compliment I can offer. The mention of her mother broke through Olivia's defenses, and tears finally spilled over. Mother would have been disappointed in how you treated me. I know, and I have to live with that knowledge. Richard stood, moving around the desk. May I embrace my daughter? Olivia looked at Jake, who nodded slightly, leaving the choice to her. She stepped forward, and her father's arms came around her, holding her as he had not done since she was a child. He was thinner than she remembered, and he trembled slightly, and Olivia realized with a start that he was weeping. I am sorry, Richard said brokenly. I am so sorry, Olivia. I forgive you, Olivia said, and she was surprised to find that she meant it. The anger and hurt were still there, but they were no longer the defining emotions. She could choose to hold on to bitterness, or she could choose to allow healing. The choice was hers, and she chose healing. They stayed at the Emerson ranch for 2 days, during which Richard made efforts to demonstrate his sincerity. He showed them the evidence against Brennan, explained how he had fired several other employees who had been complicit in the theft, and outlined his plans for reorganizing the ranch's management. He asked Jake's advice on cattle breeding, listening respectfully to suggestions. He told stories about Olivia's mother, sharing memories that Olivia had never heard. On the second evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Richard said, Thomas, I want you to consider coming back to help me run the ranch. You have proven yourself capable and honest, and I need someone I can trust. But if you would rather stay with Jake and Olivia, I will understand. Thomas looked at Olivia, uncertainty clear on his face. She smiled at him. Follow your heart, Thomas. There is no wrong choice. I think I should come back, Thomas said slowly. This ranch is my inheritance too, and if I am to run it someday, I need to learn. But I want to visit Jake and live regularly, and I want to maintain my own integrity. If I see something wrong, I will speak up, and I expect you to listen. Agreed, Richard said firmly. No more blind loyalty, no more pride overruling judgment. When it came time to depart, Olivia felt lighter than she had in months. The relationship with her father was not fully healed, would likely take years to repair completely, but they had made a start. Thomas would remain on the Emerson ranch, but he was no longer isolated and afraid. And Olivia had Jake, her partner in love, waiting to ride home with her. As they traveled back toward their own ranch, Jake reached over and took Olivia's hand. You were brave back there. Forgiveness takes courage. I learned from you, Olivia said. You offered me a home when I had none. You showed me that truth deserves a place to live. I wanted to offer my father the same grace you offered me. Truth deserves a home, Jake repeated, smiling. And you are my home, Liv. My truth, my grace, my everything. They rode on through the winter landscape, heading toward the life they were building together, toward the future that stretched bright and full of promise before them. Spring came to northern Arizona with an explosion of wildflowers and newborn calves. The work on the ranch intensified, but Olivia and Jake tackled it together with capable efficiency. Thomas visited regularly, bringing news from the Emerson ranch and slowly rebuilding his relationship with both his sister and his father. In early May, Olivia woke feeling queasy and immediately understood the cause. She waited until she was certain before telling Jake, choosing a quiet evening when they were sitting together on the porch watching the sunset. "I am pregnant," she said simply, watching his face for reaction. Jake's expression moved through surprise to wonder to pure joy in the space of a heartbeat. "Truly, truly, I think the baby will come in late autumn." Jake pulled her into his arms, holding her with tender care. "A child, our child." His voice was thick with emotion, and Olivia knew he was thinking of the son he had lost, the family he had once had and lost to fever. "Are you happy?" she asked, needing to hear him say it. "I am beyond happy. I am grateful and terrified and filled with more hope than I knew I could feel. Thank you for this gift, Liv. Thank you for bringing life and love back into my world." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer. Olivia continued working on the ranch as long as she was able, though Jake became increasingly protective as her belly grew round. Richard visited several times, bringing gifts for his future grandchild and showing a tenderness toward Olivia that she had not seen since childhood. In late October, as the aspens turned gold and the air grew crisp, Olivia went into labor. Jake rode for the doctor while Mrs. Walsh stayed with Olivia, offering experienced guidance through the long hours of pain and effort. By the time Jake returned with the doctor, the baby was nearly ready to make an appearance. "I am here," Jake said, taking Olivia's hand. "I am right here with you." "Do not leave," Olivia gasped between contractions. "Never. I will never leave you." When their son finally entered the world just before dawn, his cry was strong and lusty, announcing his arrival with determination. The doctor pronounced him healthy and perfect, and when he placed the baby in Olivia's arms, she wept with exhaustion and joy. "He is beautiful," she said, looking down at the tiny face, the dark hair, the little fingers that grasped at air. Jake leaned over them both, his own eyes wet with tears. "What should we name him?" Olivia had been thinking about this for months. "I want to name him after your son, if that would honor Michael's memory rather than cause you pain." Jake was silent for a long moment, visibly struggling with emotion. "That would honor him greatly. Michael Vaughn." "But perhaps a middle name as well. Michael Thomas Vaughn," Olivia suggested. "For my brother who stood by me when I needed him." "Perfect," Jake said, kissing her forehead. "You are perfect, and he is perfect, and I am the most fortunate man alive." The weeks after Michael's birth were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Olivia was grateful for Jake's help, for his willingness to walk the floor with a crying baby in the middle of the night, to change diapers and heat bottles when Olivia needed rest. They navigated the challenges of new parenthood together, learning as they went, finding joy in small victories and humor in disasters. Thomas visited frequently, delighted with his nephew and eager to help however he could. Richard came as well, gentler and more approachable than Olivia had ever seen him, holding baby Michael with the carefulness of a man who understood how precious and fragile life could be. "He has your mother's eyes," Richard told Olivia one afternoon as he rocked the baby. "I wish she could have known him. She would have loved him fiercely." "I tell him about her," Olivia said. "I want him to know his grandmother through stories, to understand the strength and grace she embodied." "You embody those same qualities," Richard said. "I know I did not always see it, did not always value it. But watching you now, seeing the life you have built, the family you are raising, I am humbled by your strength. You could have let bitterness consume you, but you chose love instead." As the months passed and baby Michael grew, the ranch prospered. Jake and Olivia expanded their herd, improved their pastures, and earned a reputation for fair dealing and quality livestock. Thomas took over more responsibilities on the Emerson ranch, proving himself a capable manager, and earning his father's trust and respect. The relationship between Olivia and her father continued to heal, built slowly through consistent effort and demonstrated change. Richard made a point of visiting regularly, of remembering birthdays and holidays, of showing interest in Olivia's life and opinions. He consulted her on business decisions, valued her input, and publicly acknowledged that he had been wrong to disown her. When Marcus Brennan's trial finally took place, both Olivia and Thomas testified about the theft they had discovered. Brennan was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in territorial prison. As he was led away, he glared at Olivia with undisguised hatred, but she felt no fear, only pity for a man who had thrown away honor for greed. 2 years after Michael's birth, Olivia gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Catherine, honoring both Jake's first wife and Mrs. Walsh, who had become a dear friend and surrogate grandmother to their children. The delivery was easier than the first, and baby Sarah was a calm, content infant who rarely cried. "I think she has your temperament," Olivia told Jake as they watched their daughter sleep in her cradle. "Michael is all energy and determination, but Sarah is peaceful and observant." "She has your beauty," Jake replied, wrapping his arms around Olivia's waist and pulling her close. "Both of our children are extraordinary, but that is because they have an extraordinary mother." Life settled into a rhythm of work and family, seasons passing in cycles of planting and harvest, birth and growth. Michael grew into a bright, curious boy who loved horses and wanted to know how everything worked. Sarah was quieter but equally sharp, with a talent for drawing and a gentleness that drew animals to her. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Jake and Olivia sat on their porch as they had so many evenings before, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. The children were asleep inside, the cattle were settled in their pastures, and the world felt right and complete. "Do you ever regret how things turned out?" Jake asked, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been if you had not spoken up about Brennan?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "I regret the pain it caused, the months of estrangement from my father and brother, but I do not regret speaking the truth, and I do not regret any of the events that brought me to you. If I had to walk the same path again to end up here, I would do it without hesitation." "You changed my life," Jake said quietly. "I was existing, not living, going through motions without purpose or joy. You brought light back into my world, Liv. You and our children, you are everything I did not know I was allowed to hope for." "You saved me," Olivia replied. "When I had nowhere to go, you offered me shelter. When I needed purpose, you gave me work. When I needed love, you offered your heart. You told me that truth deserves a home, and you gave me exactly that." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called and the wind whispered through the pines. This was home, Olivia thought. Not the land or the house, though those mattered, but this feeling of safety and love, of partnership and shared purpose, of truth honored and cherished. She thought about the girl she had been 5 years earlier, riding into Williams with everything she owned in saddlebags and no idea what the future would hold. That girl had been afraid but determined, wounded but resilient, lost but willing to find a new path. She had spoken truth at great cost, had been cast out for her integrity, had faced an uncertain future with courage she had not known she possessed. And in the end, that truth had led her here, to this man, this life, this family. It had led her to a love deeper and more sustaining than she had imagined possible, to children who were healthy and happy, to a partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. It had led her home. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked, sensing her reflective mood. "I am thinking about truth," Olivia said. "About how it cost me one home but led me to a better one. About how the most difficult choice I ever made turned out to be the best choice. About how speaking up, even when it hurt, was the only way I could have lived with myself." "Truth is costly," Jake agreed. "But silence is more expensive in the end. You taught me that. You reminded me that integrity matters more than comfort, that honesty is worth fighting for, that doing what is right is more important than doing what is easy." "We taught each other," Olivia corrected gently. "You gave me a place to land when I was falling. You believed in me when I had trouble believing in myself. You showed me that love can be kind and strong at the same time, that partnership means standing together even when the world pushes back." Jake turned to face her more fully, taking both her hands in his. "I love you, Olivia Vaughn. I loved you when you were lost and looking for direction. I love you now as my wife and the mother of my children. I will love you when we are old and gray, sitting on this porch watching our grandchildren play. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." "I love you too," Olivia said, her heart full to overflowing. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for offering me a home when I needed one. Thank you for believing that truth matters, and for living that belief every single day." They sealed this exchange with a kiss, tender and familiar and full of promise. And as the stars wheeled overhead and the night settled around them, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. The years continued to unfold, bringing both challenges and blessings. There were hard winters and dry summers, lost cattle and tight finances, illness and injury. But there was also growth and prosperity, laughter and love, the steady accumulation of moments that made a life. Michael grew into a young man much like his father, steady and capable, with a gift for working with horses. Sarah developed a talent for business, keeping meticulous records and helping her mother manage the ranch's finances with impressive skill. Richard lived to see both his grandchildren grow, and when he passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 73, it was with his family around him and no regrets left unspoken. Thomas inherited the Emerson ranch and ran it with integrity and innovation, implementing new techniques and treating his employees fairly. He married a school teacher from Flagstaff named Rebecca, and they had 4 children who spent summers at Uncle Jake and Aunt Olivia's ranch, learning about cattle and wide open spaces. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, Jake and Olivia watched the world change around them. The Wild West was tamed, railroads connected distant towns, and automobiles began to replace horses on the streets. But some things remained constant: the love between a husband and wife, the bond of family, the value of truth spoken in kindness, the importance of home. On a warm spring evening in 1915, Jake and Olivia celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary surrounded by children and grandchildren, friends and neighbors. The ranch had grown over the decades, but the heart of it remained the same. A place built on honesty and hard work, where truth was honored and love was cultivated with intention. As the celebration wound down and guests departed, Jake and Olivia found themselves once again on the porch that had witnessed so many of their conversations over the years. They were older now, their hair silver, their hands marked by decades of labor. But the love between them was as strong as ever, perhaps stronger for having weathered 30 years of storms and sunshine. "You remember the day we met?" Olivia asked, leaning against Jake's shoulder. "Every detail. You were standing on the sidewalk looking lost and determined. I thought you were the bravest person I had ever seen. I was terrified. Brave people usually are. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting despite fear." Olivia smiled. You said that truth deserves a home. You still believe that, more than ever. And you gave truth a home live. Not just in your words, but in your life. You built something real and good, something founded on integrity. That is a legacy worth leaving. We built it together, Olivia corrected. I could never have done any of this without you. Partners, Jake said, squeezing her hand. Partners, Olivia agreed. They sat in companionable silence as the sun set over the Arizona landscape they had worked and loved for 3 decades. This land had tested them, challenged them, and ultimately rewarded them with a life of meaning and connection. They had raised children who understood the value of truth, had built a business that treated people fairly, had created a home where honesty was cherished and love was freely given. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared, Olivia thought about the path that had led her here. She thought about the girl who had spoken truth at great cost, who had been disowned for her integrity, who had ridden into an uncertain future with nothing but courage to sustain her. She thought about the cowboy who had seen her need and offered help without condition, who had said that truth deserves a home and then given her exactly that. And she thought about the life they had built together, brick by brick, day by day, through honesty and effort and unwavering commitment to each other. It was a good life, a meaningful life, a life that mattered. No regrets, Jake asked quietly, as if reading her thoughts. Not a single one, Olivia replied, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. They sat together under the stars, 2 people who had found each other against the odds, who had chosen truth and love and partnership when easier paths were available. They had built something lasting, something true, something that would endure long after they were gone. And as the night deepened around them and the ranch settled into sleep, Olivia Vaughn knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the person she was meant to be with, living exactly the life she was meant to live. Truth had cost her one home but had given her another, better one. And in the end, that made all the difference. The years that followed were gentle ones, filled with the quiet joys of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, of watching the ranch continue to thrive under Michael's capable management, while Sarah used her business acumen to expand their markets and profitability. Jake and Olivia stepped back from the daily work gradually, becoming advisors and storytellers, the keepers of family history and wisdom. They grew old together with grace, their love deepening into something that transcended passion and became something more profound. A unity of spirit, a completeness of understanding, a bond that required no words because it existed in the space between heartbeats. When Jake passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 87, with Olivia's hand in his last words were, "Thank you for the truth, and thank you for the home we made together." Olivia lived another 3 years, long enough to see her great-grandson Jacob carry on the family name, long enough to know that everything she and Jake had built would continue. When her own time came, she went with a smile on her face and peace in her heart, knowing she had lived fully and loved deeply, knowing she had honored truth and been honored in return. The ranch continued for generations, always remembered as a place where integrity mattered, where truth was valued, where a rancher's daughter who had been disowned for speaking up had found a cowboy who believed that truth deserves a home. And in finding each other, they had created something that would last far beyond their own lives. A legacy of love built on honesty, a family founded on truth, and a home where both could flourish forever.